There are rare instances wherein people possess an exceptional memory, either above or below the normal memory of an average human being. The study on exceptional memory has been found to be directly related to neuropsychological investigations of psychological mechanisms in relation to the process of memory storage and retrieval. And now, let us proceed to define what is mnemonist. So, mnemonist is a person who shows enhanced skills in memory keeping by using personal techniques unique to him, her, or them. And we must know that S is one of the famous mnemonists. It is studied by the Russian psychologist Alexander Luria in 1968 through a memory test for over 30 years. It can also recall information even if 15 to 16 years have passed. His technique was to convert information into visual imagery. For example, he reported that when asked to remember the word green, he would visualize a green flower pot. For the word red, he visualized a man in a red shirt coming toward him. He felt that his synesthesia was a hindrance to his listening skills as his brain automatically converts information to visual images, limiting his ability to understand concepts such as infinity or nothing. For example, S automatically would convert a sound into a visual impression. He even reported experiencing a word's taste and weight. Each word to be remembered evoked a whole range of sensations that automatically would come to S when he needed to recall that word. The second mnemonist is VP. According to Hunt and Love 1972, a Russian immigrant could memorize long strings of material such as rows and columns of numbers. Apparently relied more on verbal translations. He reported memorizing numbers by transforming them into dates. Then, he would think about what he had done on that day. His memory ability was once average but was subjected to over 200 practice sessions. From remembering around 7 digits, he could remember up to 80 digits after training. His technique was to convert numbers into running times for varying races because he was an experienced long-distance runner. However, he could not remember numbers which cannot be translated to running times. Many of us yearn to have memory abilities like those of mnemonist S or VP. In this way, we may believe we could ace our exam virtually effortless. However, we should consider that mnemonist S was not particularly happy with his life, and part of the reason was his exceptional memory. At this time, let us define what is synesthesia. So, synesthesia is the experience of sensations in a sensory modality different from the sense that has been physically stimulated. Also, it is a conversion of preserved information to another type of sense which is easier for the person to understand and remember. For example, sound to visual image. And also, people tend to remember new memories which are familiar, similar, or related to the old memory and store. And at this time, we will define what is hypermnesia. According to Erdely and Goldberg 1979, Holmes 1991, Turtle and Yule 1994, it is a process of producing retrieval of memories that would seem to have been forgotten. Also, recalling inaccessible or hard to retrieve information by using retrieval cues, techniques, or therapies such as psychodynamic therapy. People can think of a new memory believing it is new one than to recall a real old memory. We usually take for granted the ability to remember, much like the air we breathe. However, just as we become more aware of the importance of air, when we do not have enough to breathe, we are less likely to take memory for granted when we observe people with the serious memory deficiencies. And now, let us proceed to the deficient memory. In deficient memory, there are many syndromes associated with memory loss. Just as with the study of exceptionally good memory, the study of deficient memory provides us with many valuable insights into how memory works. In this section, we will have a look at two syndromes. The first and almost well known is amnesia. Afterwards, we will explore the symptoms and causes of Alzheimer's disease, which is another permanent disease that causes memory loss. At this time, we will discuss the amnesia. We begin this section on amnesia by looking at some case studies to gain a better understanding of what amnesia is and what different kinds of amnesia exist. Afterwards, we will consider what insights can be gained about the differences between implicit and explicit memory by studying amnesia, and have a look at neuropsychological findings in the context of amnesia. According to Robbins 2009, amnesia is a severe loss of explicit memory. At this time, we will discuss the different kinds of amnesia. First is the retrograde amnesia. According to Levin et al. 2009, Squire 1999, retrograde amnesia is in which individuals lose their purposeful memory for events prior to whatever trauma induces memory loss, and for example is the concussion. It is a head injury that can lead to confusion and problems remembering new information. According to W. Rich Russell and P. W. Nathan 1946, a 22-year-old landscaper suffered retrograde amnesia wherein he lost his memory between February 1922 and the accident in August 1933. In retrograde amnesia, the memories that return typically do so starting from the more distant past. They then progressively return up to the time of the trauma. Often events right before the trauma are never recalled. And according to Scoville and Milner 1957, the case of HM is one of the most famous cases of amnesia. HM underwent brain surgery to save him from continual disruptions due to uncontrollable epilepsy. And the second kind of amnesia is the anterograde amnesia. It is the inability to remember new events that happened after the event that induced memory loss. And HM was a person of above average intelligence who underwent brain surgery on September 1, 1953. After which he was not able to collect new memories and remains believing it was still 1953. And the last kind of amnesia is the infantile amnesia. According to Spear 1979, it is the inability to recall events during infant days. Some question whether or not it is a form of amnesia. And now, let us proceed to the explicit and implicit memory distinction. Why do researchers study amnesia patients? What kinds of insight can be gained from amnesia research? One of the general insights gained by the studying amnesia victims highlights the distinction between explicit and implicit memories. First is the explicit memory. It is usually impaired in amnesia, refers to the information collected and learned implicitly such as names, events, and experience. It is also called the knowing that. And the second one is the implicit memory. It is rarely affected in amnesia. It is refers to the skills produced and caused by explicit memory such as driving, writing, reading, and speaking. It is also known the knowing how. And now, we will discuss the amnesia and neuropsychology. So, it is a memory depends on efficient functionality of specific parts of the brain. What is RAS or the reticular activating system? It is a segment in the brain which is essential to life just for its normal functioning. Also, the malfunction of a body organ is not always related to the brain's processes. Dissociation. It is the presence of a particular function in a normal humans. For example, as the lesions in the brain show the absence of a specific function. And the next one is the double dissociation. People bearing neuropathological conditions exhibit opposite deficient pattern. For example, lesion in the left parietal lobe cause an ability to store short-term memories. However, there is no significant impairment or distractions in collection and storage of long-term memory for the right parietal lobe. Some parts of the brain are responsible and are vital in memory storage. And now, we will discuss the Alzheimer's disease. So, what is Alzheimer's disease? Alzheimer's disease, it is a disease of older adults that causes dementia as well as progressive memory loss. Although amnesia is the syndrome most associated with memory loss, it is often less devastating than a disease that includes memory loss as one of many symptoms, and one of the symptoms of the Alzheimer's disease is the memory loss. Alzheimer's disease leads to atrophy or the decrease in size of the brain, especially in the hippocampus and frontal and temporal regions of the brain, according to Jack et al. 2002. And dementia is a loss of intellectual function that interferes with executing daily tasks. The disease was first identified by Alois Alzheimer in 1907. It is typically recognized on the basis of loss of intellectual function in daily life. Formally, a definitive diagnosis is possible only after death. And now, we will define the onset Alzheimer's disease and the late onset Alzheimer's disease. First is the onset Alzheimer's disease. It is linked to genetic mutations happens to people below 50, sometimes as early as 20 years old. And the late onset Alzheimer's disease, it can possibly caused by genetic and environmental factors. And now, we are in the last part of our discussion. So, in this part, we will answer the question, how are memories stored? So, renowned neuropsychologist Carl Lashley 1950 reluctantly stated that he could find no specific locations in the brain for specific memories. In the decades since Lashley's admission, psychologists have located many cerebral structures involved in memory. For example, they know of the importance of the hippocampus and other nervous structures. However, the psychological structure may not be such that we will find largely elusive localization of specific ideas, thoughts, or events. In addition, the hippocampus and some related nervous cerebral structures appear to be important for explicit memory of experiences and other declarative information. The hippocampus also seems to play a key role in the encoding of declarative information, according to Mans and Ichibum 2006 and Thompson 2000. At the same time, Other memory structures may be responsible for non-declarative forms of memory. For example, the basal ganglia seem to be the primary structures controlling procedural knowledge, according to Shami et al. 2009. Furthermore, the cerebellum also seems to play a key role in the memory for classically conditioned responses and contributes to many cognitive tasks in general, according to Thompson and Steinmetz 2000. The amygdala is often associated with emotional events. So, a natural question to ask is whether, in memory tasks, there is involvement of the amygdala in memory for emotionally charged events. We also know that some neurotransmitters disrupt memory storage. Both serotonin and acetylcholine seem to enhance neural transmission associated with memory. Serotonin also plays a role in another form of memory dysfunction, which is the Korsakoff syndrome. Korsakoff syndrome has been linked to damage in the encephalon, or the region comprising the thalamus and the hypothalamus of the brain, according to Postma et al. 2008. Some of the most fascinating research in cognitive psychology focuses on the strategies used in regard to memory. Memory strategies and memory processes are the subject of the following chapter. This chapter illustrates some of the key themes noted in Chapter 1. First is the applied versus basic research. Second is the biology versus behavioral methods. And the last one is the structures versus processes. Applied versus basic research. Basic and applied research can interact. An example is research on Alzheimer's disease. Presently, the disease is not curable, but is treatable with drugs and with guidance provided in a structured living environment. Basic research into the biological structures and cognitive functions associated with Alzheimer's may one day help us better understand and treat the disease. Biology versus behavioral methods. This chapter shows the interaction of biology with behavior. The hippocampus has become one of the most carefully studied parts of the brain. Current functional magnetic resonance imaging, or the fMRI research, is showing how the hippocampus and other parts of the brain, such as the amygdala in the case of emotionally based memories, and the cerebellum in the case of procedural memories, function to enable us to remember what we need to know. Biological processes have an impact on what we experience, how we behave, and what we remember. This one is the structures versus processes. Structure and function are both important to understanding human memory. That Kinsey Schopenhauer proposed control processes that operate on three structures: a very short-term store, a short-term store, and a long-term store. The more recent working memory model proposes how executive function controls and activates portions of long-term memory to provide the information needed to solve tasks at hand. In conclusion, our abilities to store and retrieve our memories shall not be taken advantage of. People who have deficient memory definitely encounter such challenges in their daily life, but this also applies to those who possess enhanced memory. Mnemonists are people who bear above normal memory abilities by using specific techniques. Synesthesia is the experience of the different input and output of the information. Hypermnesia is the process of retrieving memories which people think they have forgotten. The three types of amnesia are retrograde, anterograde, and infantile amnesia. There are two categories of memory, which is the explicit and the implicit memory.